Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for this invitation. And I slightly modified the talk in the interest because coronary obstruction due to displaced prosthesis is a very rare condition, in fact. So I thought, like, why not discuss about the coronary obstruction in a whole, and that assumes more importance than just talking about the displaced prosthesis. Aortic stenosis, if I have to tell, then it's a kind of genetic condition in which there is some amount of remodeling, and there is the longitudinal diameter is decreased. So if you see in aortic stenosis, what happens is this shortens, the coronary height decreases, and this may be one of the reasons why coronary obstructions can occur, because of the either it may be because of the prosthesis skirt, or because of the leaflet movement, or because of the calcium. We know that I'll be talking about two valves mainly, the Edward valve and the Medtronic valve. The Medtronic valve, we know that the height of the prosthesis is almost like 45, and the height of the skirt ranges from 12 to 13 millimeter, and the depth that is required to be maintained is 3 to 5 millimeters. So if we see, the height of the coronary should be something around 10 millimeter, so as not to close the coronaries with the skirt of the valve. But this is not the only mechanism by which coronary obstruction occurs. Now, if we see, the valve sits in the annulus in this way, and we can see that this is the sinotubular junction, height of the sinotubular junction, this is the height of the coronaries, and this is the sinus of Vassalva. So even if the skirt is like the skirt comes until here, the filling of the coronaries occurs in diastole. So if the sinus of Vassalva is roomy, then the blood can easily flow and there won't be any closure of the coronaries. At the same time, if we see that if the sinotubular junction height is well above the limit of 15 millimeter, then also if the sinus of Vassalva is quite roomy and the coronary height is less than 10 millimeter, the closure is not going to happen. The third thing that we need to note is about the leaflet, the movement of the leaflet while the valve is being deployed. Now, if the valve, when it is deployed, the leaflet comes in this direction, and if there is a heavy amount of calcium on the leaflet, there is a tendency that the leaflet may fall back, also be pulled by the coronary pressure, negative coronary pressure, and chance of closure of the coronaries could be there. So these are some of the important things that we need to keep in mind while we are thinking about doing case, TAVI case. Similarly, if we go for an Edward valve, then the whole measurement again comes down to something like the coronary height of 10 millimeter, as well as the sinus of Vassalva diameter, and STJ height remains the same. In case we are too confused about whether the coronary is going to get closed or not, then what we can do is, like it has been done over here, while we are doing a valvotomy, pre-valvotomy, you can just do an aortogram and see if the coronaries are getting closed or not. If the coronaries are getting closed by the movement of the valve, by the movement of the leaflet, then you need to take a special care. That is, you may wire the coronary, put a stent prior into the coronary, and when deploy the valve, if the coronary gets closed, you can just pull back the stent and deploy the stent. That's called as coronary protection over here. I'll just show a few cases and that will clarify us how the coronary gets closed and why not. There was an 82 years old male, high STS score and Euro score. He had low flow, low gradient aortic stenosis, and balloon atrial valvotomy was performed 6 weeks back. We looked at the functional status and the patient made a dramatic improvement, so we decided to go for TAVI. This patient had normal coronaries at the time of balloon atrial valvotomy. Now, you look at the CT, it's 24.9 perimeter derived diameter, a lot of calcium in the sinus of Vassalva as well as in the LVOT. The calcium extends into the LVOT as well. If we see, the whole of the annulus is calcified, aortic valve is calcified. These are very high risk cases to do. When we see the height of the coronaries, the left coronary height is quite good enough, and at the same time you can see that the calcium is extending into the LVOT over here. In the right side, you can see the calcium extends right into the cusp and almost reaches up to the ostium of the right coronary. The height of the right coronary was 9.6, But we thought like the sinus vessel was quite roomy and the height of the STJ was quite good. So we thought, okay, we can get away. But at the same time, we kept in mind that there could be a chance of annular rupture. So we decided to go for a Medtronic valve in this case. Medtronic valve was deployed, and you can see just after deployment, there was ST elevation in 2-3 AVF, and you can see a lot of chunk of calcium sitting out of there. You cannot see the right coronary artery at all. Immediately, selective angiogram was done, and you can see that the ostium of the right coronary artery has got occluded. Immediately it was wired, ballooned, and this was, initially I thought like, okay, if ballooning can help, just help it, then I'm going to leave it, but it did not help, so I had to stent this segment, and post this stenting there was a good result. So here you can see that it is the amount of calcium in the right coronary cusp and the leaflet calcium. The height of the coronaries was also less. These were the major factors due to which the coronaries got occluded. So another case, this was another high-risk case, treated case of CA prostate, and he had undergone PTCA to LMCA to LAD and LCX through bifurcation lesion, mid RCA PTCA, the high Euroscore, the gradient were pretty high, decided to do TAVI. You can see in this case itself also that there is a large amount of calcium present. On the right side, the calcium extends into the cusp as well as below. On the left side, the coronary height is okay. Non-coronary cups look fine. We did not expect any kind of problem in this case, particularly until now, I don't know why this problem occurred in this case. As soon as the valve was deployed, the patient was shifted to the ICU, but the patient developed hypotension and required inotropic support, so he was shifted back to cath lab. There was also ST elevation V1 to V6 and AVR. So you can see a selective angiogram. There was some haziness over there, so decided to, the right was normal. The coronaries were wired, and now you can see the thrombus formation right at the ostium of the left main, and the circumflex is closed. So went ahead, dilated the circumflex first, did a kissing dilatation over there. Since it was already stented, decided not to stent any of these arteries, but decided to stent the circumflex because the circumflex was a new occlusion without anything. So finally there was a good result. The patient did well later on. This is another case. I'm going to give a couple of cases with sapien valve. Now you can see a lot of calcium in the left coronary cups extends into the non-coronary cups. When you measure the distance between the cusp and the leaflet and the height of the coronary, both were 16 millimeter, high likelihood of closure. This case I picked up from other friend of mine, and you can see just after the implantation of the valve, there was closure of this left main. Immediately it was, plasty was done with 4 into 12 millimeter of drug-eluting stent, and there was no damage. But here again you can see it was because of the large amount of calcium that was present in the left coronary cusp and the non-coronary cusp. Again here you can see the valve was deployed, but when you see carefully, the valve was slightly at the level of the annulus, and probably with a lot of hemodynamic things going over here, the coronaries got closed immediately. It was plastered with 4 into 12 millimeter stent, and the patient did well. So here it is mainly because the prosthesis here was slightly higher than the annulus, not maintaining the 25% of depth that has to be there. These are some unusual cases. These I picked up from the journals, and you can see that this coronary, the patient had a paravalvular leak, and the leak was closed with AVP2. Just after the closure, the operators did IVUS, and they found that the slit was narrowed with so they just went ahead and plastered the case. So it is a case where there was coronary obstruction because of the AVP2 valve that was used for paravalvular leak closure. This is a very interesting case. Again, I picked up from the net this also. This is like the guy underwent TAVI about 6 months back, and then he developed severe hypotension. During hypotension, there was ST elevation in 2-3 AVF as well as global ST elevation. So the patient was brought into the hospital. The patient had already stabilized, When aortogram was done, everything was fine. Now you can see over here in the CT that this is clearly a supraannular valve which extends right above the coronaries. This is another case because of the pseudoaneurysm formed while post-dilatation intraannular pseudoaneurysm which went on to obstruct the left main, and the patient refused any kind of intervention in this case. The patient was discharged and finally expired after a week. While we consider valve in valve, two things has to be considered, like what the surgeon has done, whether it is an intraannular valve or whether it is a supraannular valve. If it is a supraannular valve, the height of coronaries would have decreased itself. So there is a high chance that the coronaries might get closed. So it is better to use a retrievable valve, whichever you are using, and if the coronaries get closed, just retrieve the valve and think of another way of making the patient, rather than you just going ahead with TAVI. If it is an intraannular, then the chance of closure is quite low. So to summarize, the chance of coronary occlusion depends upon degree of calcification of the leaflet, annulus to coronary osseous distance, length of the valve leaflet, width of the sinus of valva, height of sinotubular junction, movement of the leaflets during balloon atrial valvotomy, patency of coronaries during balloon aortic valvotomy, expanded height of the intended valve, and whether if we are doing a valve in valve case, then whether the surgeon has put an intraannular or a supraannular valve. All these things needs to be considered when you are doing a TAVI in regard to coronaries. Thank you very much.